to go with. We have 5 items on our agenda there. The first item is to approve the Board of Equalization Assessor Approved Review Process Report. Were there any questions on that?
No.
Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the assessor approved process report.
If
Have
I
a
get
motion.
my mic on. There we go. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve regular agenda item number 1. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion will carry 3-0. Next up, we have to consider approving the Board of Equalization hearing process report. Are there any questions on that?
No questions.
No.
All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve number 2 as stated on our regular agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve regular agenda item number 2. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion will carry 3-0. Next, we have to look at approving or denying a petition to the Board of Equalization on a property valuation after the filing deadline. Look to staff for an introductory report on this item.
Thank you, Commissioners. Bert Harvey, Utah County Tax Administration. Hot mic today. The first one, the petitioner stated there were some ongoing health issues that prevented the family from filing the late valuation on time. It's not the information provided to us didn't really make it sound like the health issues were a emergency situation, so it wouldn't necessarily qualify under that. But the ongoing health issues could potentially create a point of unique, looking for extraordinary circumstances. Anyways, based on the petition, the auditor's office could recommend approval on this one.
Board, Mr. Chairman, I was a little less enthusiastic about the recommendation. The administrative rules provide that if there's a medical emergency that would prevent an owner from appealing on time, that you could accept a late petition, or if there's an extraordinary or unanticipated circumstance. Now, these ongoing health issues would not be extraordinary or unanticipated because they're ongoing. Additionally, the applicant says that his father was experiencing these ongoing health issues and doesn't describe how any of the owners were prevented from filing an appeal.
And the auditor's office doesn't disagree with any point there either. Our recommendation is lukewarm.
Okay. Questions on this one?
No.
I'll entertain a motion then.
I'll make a motion that we approve the petition of the Board of Equalization's hearing appeal of property values as stated in number 3.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve regular agenda item number 3. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion will carry 3-0. Next up, we have agenda item number 4, and this is to deny or approve a petition to the Board of Equalizations to hear an appeal on property valuation after the filing deadline. Again, we'll look to staff for an introduction.
Okay, this second petition, the petitioner really didn't give us much information to go off of. I actually contacted the petitioner to maybe get some more information as to why, they filed late. They simply said that because they got an appraisal that took them longer, that's why they filed late. The appraisal is dated September 7th, which is a few days before the filing deadline. There's not really anything else here for us to go on. Can't really see anything. There's extraordinary circumstances. There's no medical issue. There's no other things that would really technically qualify. Not really a notice issue. We unfortunately would have to recommend deny on this one.
Any additional questions?
I see it the same way, especially with the date as stated on their appraisal.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we deny the petition as stated in number 4.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to deny the petition as stated in regular agenda item number 4. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion will carry 3-0. Next, we have a motion to approve or deny a petition to the board to hear an appeal of property valuation after the filing deadline. Staff.
This was a lot easier. This is a factual error that the assessor's office is in agreement that they'd like to take a look at and correct for the factual error. So We recommend approval for correction of the factual error only.
Very simple. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the petition as stated number 5 on our regular agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve regular agenda item number 5. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion will carry 3-0. We'll entertain one final motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion will carry 3-0. All right, we will now go ahead, as soon as we get our recordings ready, move into our Board of Trustees for Utah County Service Area 7. Okay, we're now entering our meeting for the Utah County Board of Trustees for Utah County Service Area number 7. This is an item that had been continued. My understanding from the clerk auditor's office is that they're requesting continuance again to finalize some documents, correct? Okay, I would entertain a motion to such.
I'll make a motion that we continue agenda item number 1 as stated on the documents.
Second.
There's a public
I-
hearing also.
Right, I'm sorry, Dave, I just got that. So we'll hold off on that one. We do have a public hearing on this one. Is there anyone here from the public at this time that would like to address this issue, this item?
On up.
So, yeah, if you,
On up.
so if you would like to address it's a public hearing for the budget for Service Area 7.
My name is Robert Stevens. Will you explain which is Service Area 7? I wasn't quite sure about that. I thought this was a budget for the county.
This is structure fire.
This is structure fire.
Structure fire.
Okay, I'm sorry. This
okay.
isn't the one I want to appeal on. Are we still doing the one that you sent the email out, Bill,
Which one?
on the taxes, increasing the taxes?
That's tomorrow night.
Property taxes.
The property the general county budget is tomorrow evening.
Okay, in a rush, I misread the email. I'm sorry. Thank you.
It's okay. Okay, is there any other public who would wish to speak to Service Area 7? Seeing none, we will go ahead and close the public hearing. Now we will entertain the motion to continue.
I would suggest that you continue the public hearing since we don't have a budget available yet.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to continue both the public hearing and the agenda item.
I'll make the motion that we continue the public hearing and agenda item number 1 for 1 week.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue the public hearing and the regular agenda item number 1 for 1 week. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion will carry 3-0. We'll consider one final motion.
Motion to
Motion
adjourn.
to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
I have a
Whichever
motion-
way.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion will carry 3-0. Okay, we're going to go ahead and pause and then restart our recording, and we'll move into our next meeting. All right, we'll now begin our meeting for the Board of Trustees of Utah County for Service Area number 8. To start off this, we do have a public hearing to discuss the 2019 budget for Utah County Service Area number 8. Are there any members of the public who would wish to address this budget? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And again, on this one, my understanding from the clerk auditor's office, we're still waiting on some final documentation, and they've requested continuance. And so I would entertain the motion to continue both the public hearing and the agenda.
I will move that we continue the public hearing and regular agenda item 1 for 1 week.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue the public hearing and regular agenda item number 1 for 1 week. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion will carry 3-0. I'll entertain one final motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion will carry 3-0. Okay, we've got our recordings all set and ready to go again for our next meeting. We'll now begin our Board of County Commissioners meeting for Utah County. We appreciate your attendance and participation with us today. As is typical, we like to begin this meeting with a prayer, reading, or thought, along with the Pledge of Allegiance, and look to the audience for volunteers who would participate with us. Are there any who would be willing to offer a prayer, reading, or thought, or lead us in the pledge? Okay, Heidi, do you have a?
Whatever is needed.
Either one, we'll let you pick.
What do we have?
The prayer, reading, or thought, or the pledge? Perfect. If you'd like to go ahead and come forward, and we'll have Andrew lead us in the pledge. If you can just state your name for the record, please.
Heidi Baldery. Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful to have the opportunity to meet here as citizens and to pursue the best options for our county. We ask Thee, Father, to have Thy Spirit to be with us and guide us and help us to maintain decorum. We are grateful for the blessings that Thou hast bestowed upon us and ask us to be good stewards of those blessings. We're thankful for this country we live in, and particularly our county. Please help us to express our thoughts as needed, and to please bless those who are presiding to listen to the thoughts that are presented here today. And this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we sure appreciate your participation with that. We'll now go through the process of building our agenda. All items will be considered moved to consent unless held for additional discussion. If you wish to address an item that was that was placed on consent, there will be an opportunity for that, as well as public comment following items held for regular discussion. On our current consent agenda, we did have 20 items. Were there any of those items that either of the commissioners had additional questions on?
Yes, can we hold number 11? Number 15, there was just a comment on there. There was a missing R in the agreement. If I don't mind leaving that on consent if we just make sure and
Correct the type.
correct the
Type error.
typo.
Hmm?
Those are the only two.
Okay, Commissioner Graves?
I'm good on that same one.
Okay. All right, looking at our regular agenda, we do have, outside of our closed meetings, 13 items. I do have probably to be held for discussion or continuance, items number 4, 8, 9, and 11. Are there any others?
For continuance?
Well, just for discussion or to be held.
Oh, okay. I thought we were gonna.
So I've had requests, there was, and we can talk about that now, on number 4, after our COG meeting, there was a resolution passed there, along with a request to give the cities some time to pass resolutions with their city council, and that obviously would take some additional time, so we can discuss that item or we can move to continue it. On items 8 and 9, I did have a request for continuance so that we could clarify some language changes. And number 11.
So on 4, did you want to just continue it for one more week and see where we're at?
Well, that's a good question, because part of the question was how long it would take the cities to get those resolutions passed through. And I would guess a week probably may or may not be enough time. Commissioner Lee, you're at the COG meeting. What were your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, that'd be fine. We still don't have our service level agreement in place. We've had a proposal on that. That's gonna take more time than a week to even go through that process and I would recommend, I would actually recommend on number 4 that we strike number 4 from the agenda until we get things in place.
And I would be fine with that again, and this is part of, for those who are unaware, COG is a Council of Government meeting that's held typically monthly, where the mayors of the county meet along with the commission. And we had a meeting Thursday of last week, and in that meeting, the mayors passed a resolution in support of this quarter-cent sales tax, and there was discussion about the city council's support, and the suggestion was made they get resolutions passed showing support for that, and that was agreed upon at that meeting. So I know, looking at the audience, I'm anticipating there'd be some that would like to speak to this, but I'm fine with striking it, but still allowing public comment on the item. And I'm seeing lots of head shake, so perhaps we could hold that for discussion to allow public comment and then make a determination on whether to continue or strike. That work?
I would suggest continuing it, because otherwise I'm definitely putting it back on next Tuesday.
Okay. And that's, so we'll hold that particular item for some discussion so that the people that are here can address it. Okay, and then I had 8 and 9, again, were requested for continuance so we could work out some,
And 11.
and 11, so that we can work out some verbiages in the contract. We good?
That's
moving-
great for me.
Okay. Are there any other items on the regular agenda that you'd like to see held for discussion? Yes.
Yes,
8, 9,
if-
and
if
11 for 1 week.
we could, Mr. Chair, going with what we've kind of set as a precedence for items of staffing for discussion in our personnel meetings. I'd like to table 1 and 2 for discussion, and then bring them back onto the agenda after our closed meetings.
Okay.
And then if we could also hold number 3. And then number 5 is an action to adopt or deny. I'm fine if we just state that that's adopting, if that's consent to adopt, unless there's objection to that.
Nope.
Nope.
That's fine.
And then number 6, I'd like to hold.
Okay.
Number 7 for discussion, and also on number 10, in talking with Mr. Moore, I think that there's some wording and a few things we're still working on. I would recommend that we continue that for 1 week.
Okay.
That's fine with me.
You're back.
I know you're considering what to do with number 10, but I did just receive a few minutes ago some language from Mr. Baker, Junior Baker from Spanish Fork City. I have forwarded to all 3 of you. Essentially, that language, Commissioner Lee, that you were concerned about was the voting of the new entity and what the county's percentage of that vote would be, the county government percentage. What Mr. Baker has recommended is using the language that's currently in the bylaws now that gives the county 3 votes. So that would be, we'd have to do an addendum to put that in there. But I did get the language that he suggested just a few minutes ago. So if you'd like, whatever you like to do.
And for me, I'd just like to digest it instead of voting on something I haven't actually seen.
That's fair. And Mr. Reeves is here again from Santaquin. You want to hear from him?
Okay.
So if we could continue that for 1 week, I'd appreciate that.
So we'd move 10 to consent for continuance. Okay.
That's it.
All right. Commissioner Graves?
That's
Okay.
fine with me.
All right, so I've got from consent for number 11 for discussion, items 1 and 2 tabled till after closed meeting. Item 3 for discussion. Item 4 we'll hold for discussion. 5 is moved to consent as an adopt. 6 and 7 for discussion. 8, 9, 10, and 11 to consent to be continued for 1 week. Did you follow that, Renee? Okay, perfect. All right, we'll go ahead then and look at consent agenda item number 11. Commissioner Lee, I believe you had a question on this one.
Yes, we had the supplemental law enforcement agreement on this already in place, and I realized after that there was a request for additional time, and I don't know if there was any action taken on that. My concern is that are we being asked to approve and authorize the signature of the additional time in which it's already taken place? It's already been done. That's my question, because we're talking about November 21st. I mean, technically, there shouldn't be any activity going on without a contract in place, and I'm just concerned that activity has happened without a contract in place.
Do we have, Sheriff, are you?
Typically, these are done before time, and on this one, I need to check to make sure. I do know on this one that this was not an anticipated event. This was a activist group that was coming into our area, and this was one of the targeted locations on their list, and so there was some exigency in getting some support out to this company. So this wasn't something we had a lot of time to work with.
Okay. Well, my question is that, I mean, we approved of a contract with this group for a certain amount of days, and then it appears like there was an extension, or they wanted to have an extension of days,
Yeah.
which would go outside of the contract that we had already signed in place. And is this to correct that, in the sense that it was
For the longer time?
for the
Yes.
longer time?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
I think again, I think the activist group kind of dictated the actions there, and it went longer than anticipated.
So my suggestion would, I mean, law enforcement could have gone out there on their own and without a contract in place and provided services. If there was, my concern is that if I approve this, I'm approving something that has already taken place in which we didn't approve. Usually we put it on to ratify if there's two commissioners who.
And I understand that. The company is offering to pay us back for that service, where otherwise they wouldn't. And we could have done that, but they are going to pay for that service.
Yeah, okay. I just don't want it to be a precedent thing. I think
I don't think it has been. I think this was an exigent circumstance with an activist group coming into town. I don't know that there's a history of doing this.
Well, I just don't want it to be a precedent for the future that we don't, I mean, it's our policies and procedures.
And I understand that, but the nature of law enforcement sometimes is that things happen that are a little bit out of our control. And I think we also need to be a little flexible to be able to serve our communities properly. When people ask for help, there needs to be a process to provide that.
Which you could have done.
And we did.
You did.
But it went longer than anticipated.
Yeah, and you have that flexibility to do that. But on a contract basis, I can't vote for something that we didn't set up beforehand.
Okay.
It goes against our policies.
Anything else?
So for perfect clarification, we had a contract with them. It went longer. This particular contract enables the entity that we were providing additional service for to compensate us for the extra service
Yes,
provided.
they want to compensate us.
Okay, I will consider a motion then on number 11.
I will move, although I agree with Commissioner Lee, it should, in my opinion, probably say ratify. I will move that we approve and authorize the law enforcement contract as stated in number 11.
I'll second it for discussion, but ratify is a whole different process.
I agree.
And the ratification was not obtained.
Correct.
That's the process in which we go through.
Correct. Okay, I have a motion and a second on number 11 to approve and authorize the commission's signature on the supplemental law enforcement. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor of approval, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion will carry 2-1. All right, 1 and 2 have been tabled. We will now move to regular agenda item number 3. This is to discuss, approve, or deny the chair to sign an IGP budget match request with the Department of Workforce Services in Utah County. Commissioner Lee, questions?
Yes, a couple questions on this. Let me get there. Whoops, sorry, that one's there. My understanding first was that we had a 25% match, and this doesn't add up to a 25% match. It adds up to a 31% match. And then also my understanding was that we were, and so I'm not sure if on some of these numbers in here that come from different entities, if who's taking that dollar amount. Is the dollar amount in there just as a marker for part of the match? For instance, we have space costs, and it has United Way office space for $1,500, and it's all totaled into this column over here. Is that their in-kind? And I know that we were trying to do this all through in-kind.
Right.
And so the numbers don't match for me on a 25%, and I'm not sure what the numbers are on the side that total in.
So Robert Johnson, I'm with UDAP, but I'm also administrator on this. The match is just, we've listed everything that we can match with, so we've actually overmatched what we're required to match. That's why it's more than the 25%.
And that match is in-kind donations back.
Yes.
So it's not, we're not actually
cash.
expending any cash
Right.
from the county. It's simply matching through those in-kind donations through these various organizations.
Yep.
Okay, so that's what I want to make sure and clarify, that although we see at the bottom of this, a 54, well, total expense with 1 and 2 is $67,555. Those are going to be line items so that we can actually pass through or else match with, but they're actually not going to hit our budget as a $67,000.
No,
Get
it's
to the-
just
get to the
expenses
budget.
that those entities have that can be qualified as match. Because it can't be federal or state dollars, it has to be county dollars.
And we can use others like USU Extension and United Way as part of the county match.
Yep.
And that's the reason why you went to the 31%, because you're trying to capture everything that was in
Right.
there. Got it? Okay. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarifications. Any other discussion on this item?
No.
Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I got one more question. The attorney's office has seen this, correct?
Yes, I believe we've seen it. No?
I have not. It wasn't marked for review, so it wasn't one of the things for me to check off.
Oh,
Just talking with Bert right now about that.
I wonder if we shouldn't.
If we could approve it subject to that review, we'll be glad to look it over.
I'd be fine
Okay.
with that.
Let's do that.
I'll make a motion then, if we're ready for a motion, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda item number 3, subject to review from the county attorney's office.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve regular agenda item number 3, subject to review from the attorney's office. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion will carry 3-0. All right, next we'll move on to regular agenda item number 4. This is to look at adopting an ordinance enacting the quarter-cent sales tax for Utah County. This item has been discussed at some length. As I mentioned earlier, we had a fairly lengthy discussion on this item at the COG meeting last Thursday. I do know there are some people here who would wish to address this item, so at this time I will open it up for public comment.
First of all, thank you for respecting the time of the citizens in attendance expressly present, for allowing public dialogue on this topic. The taxpayers are, oh, sorry, do I need to state my name?
Yes.
Heidi Baldery.
Thank you.
The taxpayers are fatigued and weary of the barrage of tax increases. The sales tax and the property tax from the county that they propose, not to mention the recent municipal taxes enacted, and the much to be expected state tax increases. And that's not even mentioning the federal government, who also has their hands in our pocket. Adam Smith said, "The agents of government regard the wealth of their master as inexhaustible and are careless at what price they buy and at what price they sell." I'm profoundly concerned at the careless allocation of 40%, or nearly half of the sales tax proposed, be given to the UTA. Please don't throw good money after bad. The UTA has proven to be a serial failure. I work as an evaluator of graduate and undergraduate courses for a business ethics team for a local university. One of the competencies that I assess at the undergraduate level is the basic difference or distinction between ethical issues and legal issues. The basic understanding can be applied to the scenario that we are convened here today at this moment. Just because it is legal to vote for a tax increase does not mean it is ethical. Let the citizens vote. It's the right thing to do. Please don't circumvent us. The sales tax is personal. Sales tax isn't a way of tapping into a new source of income, but rather going at my personal income from a circuitous route. Basic economics tell us that sales taxes are regressive, specifically because the poor end up paying a larger share of their income. And they also place local businesses at a disadvantage and greater burden. Reliance on the sales tax for revenue is also a bad idea just in general, because it is an unstable source of revenue. This instability leads to poor decisions down the road in effort to maximize the sales tax revenues, compounding the problem. Furthermore, once a tax is set, as we well know, they almost always become permanent and very difficult to sunset or repeal. Please, Commissioners Ivey and Graves, vote no to the sales tax increase. Thank you.
Andrew Jackson, I'm the Executive Director of Mountain Land Association of Governments. I've been here several times to talk about this. I'll try and bring up items that haven't been brought up in the County Commission meeting, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have related to the fourth quarter. The reason why we're here today is because the county is the only county-wide taxing authority that can act the tax county-wide. Just to Heidi's point there, on this quarter-cent sales tax, it's not on food, and there are many other things that it's not on. And so when we look at this quarter-cent sales tax, because it's not on the food, it's not on medicine, it's not on other things, it tends to be those who spend more in discretionary income that pay a higher sales tax than those that have less in discretionary income, because they have that exemption off of food that happened in, I think it was 2006. The question I get a lot about this, one of the things is this fourth quarter is the only quarter cent for roads that has a maintenance portion. The first, second, and third quarter cents don't allow for maintenance, so this allows for maintenance. How much will it generate? It generates about 22.2 million. It's probably more, about 23 million now with some increases in the economy. The quarter cent is 1 penny on a $3.99 purchase. Typical taxpayer in Utah County will pay about $37 per year for this. The household would pay $128 per year. Again, it generates at 22 million. How will it be spent? 8.8 million of the 22 million will go to cities, towns, and the counties based off of 1% population and 1% point of sale. The other 40% that's identified for UTA will go to UTA, but there is an interlocal in place that's currently signed that does a dollar for dollar shift in that, so that that money goes back into the third quarter cent that would be spent for regional road projects. And so we have a series of projects that are listed that are currently out to be done in 2021 and 2022. We can advance those to 2019 and 2020 and then go out for a new round of regional projects that could be funded out of that. One of the things about the quarter cent is there's no admin percentage in there. So if the revenues are declining 1 year over the other, we don't go back and raise sales tax to increase those revenues, but instead we're able to delay projects. So we just put a project off for a year or two as those revenues aren't there sufficient to do that. However, by advancing projects 2 years earlier, we can save additional interest costs associated with that. And then the 4.4 million will go directly to the county for its road maintenance. And so you actually get about $4.6 million. It's not without precedent that the state allows the county to enact the tax with or without a vote of the public. We're a representative form of government. The Constitution allows that and gives those powers to those who we elect to enact those taxes. Previous taxes, the first and second quarter required a vote of the public. The third quarter did not require a vote of the public. I'm probably the only one that remembers 11 years ago when the county commission asked the mayors to pass a resolution in the MAG meeting to support them enacting that tax, and then they enacted that tax. So prior to this, the state required a vote of the public. With SB 136, they took away that requirement, so it neither requires or prohibits a vote of the public to enact it, so it can be enacted. After 2020, it has the opportunity to be enacted city by city, town by town. When that happens, the interlocal doesn't work anymore because the interlocal is based on the countywide taxation. If we go to 2020, then what Heidi had talked about, that would actually happen. If the cities enact it, then there is no interlocal, and it does go to UTA versus where we have the interlocal now. We have a proposed draft for discussion purposes only on a service level agreement. We have Ms. Holbrook, trustee for UTA that's here. I think she can talk about UTA's willingness to work with the county on adopting a service level agreement that's consistent with SB 136 and the planning level requirements of that. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I just want to make my comments brief. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Beth Holbrook, and I'm a trustee of the Utah Transit Authority. And I'm here to speak this morning in regards to just kind of giving our support. We are actually quite proud to be a partner for Utah County, and we want to be able to continue that partnership. And we recognize the value of providing public transportation. And so we're looking at ways that we can help you to be able to allow that development in the future. As Andrew mentioned, the fourth quarter will allow the debt to be repaid earlier, which will be advantageous for the county because obviously that roughly 4.6 million will then be allowed to be utilized on other road projects that can help on the local level. We are absolutely committed to completing a required service level agreement. I know that there's some language out there that we've already taken a look at and just kind of given to you to review. We are happy to do what we can in order to facilitate anything that you might need in terms of that service agreement. And the 2018 ILA, the interlocal agreement, sorry for using the acronyms this morning, the service level indicates that, or the ILA indicates that the service level agreement has to be in place prior to anything that UTA can implement. We want to, again, we want to be able to make sure that this is something that the community is understanding and knows where they're wanting the transit and where we can help facilitate that. Again, the review and approval process is established by 136, which means that the local advisory board, when it's fully engaged, is going to be required to review that. We are also, as trustees, we're also working to with the advisory board, and we anticipate that this would come towards us on our desks probably in the next couple months or so. I wanted to say one more thing. UVX has really exceeded our expectations, and we're very excited to have been a part of this process. And our ridership has exceeded expectations, and now that we have our full traffic signal implementation included, which means that the buses get to have more direct traffic correlation as they're riding their route, we feel like this is going to be advantageous for the students that are riding it with UVU and BYU. Again, anything else we were happy to engage in. We want to be an entity that you can trust and support, and I recognize that there are some challenges that we have had to overcome in the past, but that is something that we want to work on in the future. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to engage, and I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity. Did you have that?
We'll take questions. Okay. First off, thank you for being here. It's unfortunate that we don't have our own representative that on the board. That would have been nice to have. So as we work through this issue, but we don't. So thank you for coming from Bountiful.
You're welcome.
I lived up in Bountiful, so
Oh,
I don't
that's
know.
great.
I don't know you. It'll be good to get to know you on this. A couple questions for you though. Going back to the past and maybe into the future too. For us to pass this or however it's passed, this fourth quarter cent sales tax is very advantageous for UTA, is it not?
Absolutely. It is helpful for UTA to be able to have a dedicated source to understand where we can budget accordingly for service long term.
Yeah, and so with it being advantageous for UTA, there's multiple issues in the past that I find interesting. When Prop 1 was presented, the UTA narrative was that it would never go towards paying back anything when it came to the BRT system. That was what they said. And now we sit in a position in which circumstances, and I realize that as time goes by, sometimes things change in perspective, but I want to make sure and point that out, that it was said over and over, none of that money would ever go towards, paying off the UVX BRT system. But yet here we are, and we're looking at it, and interestingly enough, through the process, I've been one of the persons trying to push this interlocal agreement, and getting it in place, because people will ask, well, is that because you're for the fourth quarter cent sales tax? Not necessarily. My commitment has been to the people in that I wanted to find a way to make it palatable for the people in our county who, as I ran service-oriented businesses, they are our customer, and as they are the customer, I feel strong enough that they need to come along with this on it to support the services that are there. And so I took it to the legislature. Everyone's heard this story. Maybe you haven't because you're from Bountiful. But I took it to the legislature, tried to get something done there. It did not. We thought it did not pass. So then we looked at contracts to see if we could do it on a contractual basis. And again, my commitment was to see if we could change it on a contractual basis to make it palatable to the people in Utah County, and then I would commit not going out against it or for it, but I'd put it on the ballot so the people can come along with us. And that's been my commitment all along, is to do that. But I did want to point out, like I said, that it is advantageous for UTA. You got a $2 billion debt liability out there, and this takes a chunk of money off that debt liability process. I get that, and anyway, it's a process that we're going to have to go through. I look forward to talking with you and hopefully in the future having our own representative there that represents the will of the people here in Utah and Tooele County.
Thank you, Commissioner, and I appreciate your perspective. And again, I do recognize, I am not negating any of the challenges that might have occurred in the past or did occur in the past. But I am committing to you that I want to make sure that UTA looks at this as an advantageous partnership with the county and with the cities that we service as well. We want to make sure that we are providing that public transit option so that we can accommodate the growth that we anticipate, and we know you anticipate it as well. So we want to make sure that we are moving forward and making sure that this partnership works more successfully in the future.
So can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
Since the service level agreement is so important to our interlocal agreement that we have in place already, why in the world would we implement anything right now when we're in the middle of negotiation?
So as I understand the interlocal agreement, the interlocal agreement states specifically that nothing can be completed until the service agreement is in place.
Which we don't have.
But we have language to for your review, and we're happy to make sure that if there's any other questions or anything else on the service level agreement that you're wanting to see, we are happy to sit down and make sure that we get that taken care of for you. If I know that, as I recall, and I apologize, this is just off my memory, but I believe that there are about 4 or 5, 6 items that are already listed. And again, if this is something that you can work with, we can continue the dialogue, and we're happy to do that.
Well, is that going to be emailed to us? How are we getting that draft?
Got it.
I think you already have it.
Okay.
It's just that we're in the middle of budgeting. We've got budget going on. We've got another tax that we're looking at. We've got end of the year stuff going on, and it's a weighty issue. It's not something that's just snap our fingers and it's done.
I agree, and I absolutely understand. I know that as far as, speaking in my situation currently, I recognize that having just started on November 1st, yes, I am throwing this at you, if you will, a little bit quick on top of all of the other issues that you have to deal with. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to it. And again, we want to make sure that we are connecting with you. So anything else that you need, we are happy to do that.
So although I agree with Commissioner Lee, it'd be nice to have our representation. That's not your issue. That's a different issue. I would like to remind the Commission that enacting this tax doesn't start collection tomorrow. It's actually a very lengthy process. It takes several months for the collection to start, so it does give us time. And like the agreement says, UTA can't do anything with it. Nobody can do anything with it until that service level agreement's in place. So this is just another step in that process. So for me, obviously, to me, these are the one taxes that are necessary and easy to implement because they are a user tax. And we know people are using UTA. We know that they have a component into our master transportation plan. And, even though I won't be voting on the service level agreement because it won't be done, I know that taking this step, I trust Commissioner Lee and Commissioner Ivey to, do what they've been doing and making sure that's in place to protect Utah County in that regard. So to me, this is an important step to continue because further delay just continues to push things down the road and cost everybody in Utah County more and more money as far as transportation projects because costs go up and everything goes up. And so a delay, even though they did say they would never repay that, since that agreement of we won't repay it, the legislature has gotten very aggressive, obviously, while we're here with the new UTA board and things like that. And so with that protection in place, I think this is a good step where, yeah, they are repaying some of those commitments early, and we're having a more fiscally responsible UTA and hopefully one that has representation from Utah County very soon.
Just to answer, this is Andrew Jackson again. As Commissioner Graves said, the interlocal agreement doesn't take place until July 1st of 2019. And I guess one of the things that you could do to make sure that there's a financial reason for UTA to do a service level agreement is you could have any money that comes into UTA prior to the service level agreement being in place, that you could put that into an escrow account. and that couldn't be released until the service level agreement is in place, and then you've got that. If for whatever reason, and I don't see that occurring, that it would go beyond July 1st of 2019, you could have that in place, that there's an escrow account and UTA can't touch the funding until the service levels agreement is in place. And to your point,
those are theories, they're not written in contract.
oh, you could do, I mean,
So,
you could do that next week
I
if you
know,
wanted
but
to do
you're
it.
asking for something to be binding today that we do.
Oh,
in which we don't have a contract
no,
in place.
I'm not asking for you to enact this today. I'm just saying, if you wanted to enact it, because as Commissioner Graves said, there are several things that you have to do prior to the tax actually going into place, the notice to the tax commission, et cetera. If you feel leery that you would have a service level agreement in place prior to July 1st of 2019, you could easily sign an agreement with UTA, and I believe the Board of Trustees would be fine with that, that no funding would go to them until there's a service level agreement in place. The money would go into an escrow account or something like that, or held at the tax commission in an interest-bearing account. Additionally, on the statement that you made about UTA saying that the money would not be used for BRT, that was one person at UTA who's no longer at UTA was the one who was saying that. When Proposition 1 was being talked about, I asked UTA several times if we could do this, because I think that if we had it where the money would actually go into roads through an interlocal agreement or something on that Prop 1, that it would have had a higher success, it would have had a success rate. But there was one individual who's no longer there that was adamantly opposed to it.
I heard it multiple times, not necessarily just from one, maybe you heard it just from one, but it was, and sometimes that one person makes a big difference on who that one person is that says that.
Yeah, and they're not there anymore. Thank you.
And I'm personally grateful for your willingness to look at using that to pay down the debt. I think that's a very responsible thing to do. And I just think that we have the service level agreement in place, and then it makes things a whole lot cleaner.
Thank you, I agree, and I'm happy to, again, facilitate that. And again, thank you for your time, and again, if there's any other questions, please reach out to me, I'm happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming down.
My name is Norman Boyd. I'm 76 years old, and I earned my living by manual labor. And tax increases have been chipping away at my income. I still have to work part-time to supplement my income. I'm not in favor of any more tax increases. It makes it hard on people. I want to speak in behalf of my fellow workers who do manual labor. They are all out working today so they can pay their taxes. I noticed down here at the corner there's a bus stop. 2 people got off the bus this morning. How many of you rode the bus to work today or into this meeting? The buses make a loop around the city, but they don't take me to the grocery store. It would be hard for me to do that, or send my wife to the store. Riding a bus doesn't work. We need better roads and better conditions. People don't want to give up their cars. I don't drive a new car, I drive an old car. That's what I can afford. And there are many other people in my neighborhood and area who do likewise. Our property taxes have gone up $200 this year, and you want to raise them again? How am I going to do this? I want you to consider the lesser people in the community that struggle to get by when you raise taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
I'm Donna Boyd. I'm married to the manual laborer. The 2 people that got off the bus, that was 2 people, 2 buses. We've heard a lot of discussion from the people that we live around and associate with, how the buses go around the community. They're expensive, and there's a salary being paid to bus drivers, and they're empty, or there's 1 or 2 people on them. And with all this conversation, they started painting Siegfried and Jensen or whatever on the sides of the buses so that we couldn't see into them. But if you look closely, you can still tell that they are almost empty, 2 or 3 people. We also heard some conversation as we were sitting here waiting for the meeting to begin that they were going to offer free food to get people to ride the buses. It's my opinion that they will take the free food, take a ride on the bus, and go back to their cars. We want this to be considered as something that the public can vote on. We live on a fixed income, Social Security. We don't get very big raises, and sometimes we don't get any at all. And a lot of people that we associate with, they even have college degrees, but they don't make very big incomes. They're not getting increases. But the taxes chip away at what we're able to do. So please consider this. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you again for opening up the discussion. My name is Ronna Rolfe. I'm president of the Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce. I was here last month, read a letter from the business community in support of enacting this quarter-cent sales tax, and I would like to, I have friends today with me. I'd like to recognize my chamber colleagues. Would you guys stand? Got Heather Youd from the Spanish Fork Chamber, Spanish Fork Salem Chamber of Commerce, and Josh Walker and Christina Wiesman, who are with the American Fork Chamber, as well as the Pleasant Grove Linden Chamber. Here also representing. Their board of directors have signed on to this letter that I read you again. I won't read it again because it's in the record already. The business community really wants to encourage you and support. We were thrilled that the mayor signed on to the resolution last week. Just here to remind you that the business community is here to support and provide you with support and encouragement to enact this quarter-cent sales tax for the road maintenance portion. Lots of discussion on the UTA portion, but also remember the road maintenance. It's important to the cities as well. Thank you.
Hi, Peter Christensen, resident of Orem and executive officer of the Utah Central Association of Realtors. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the Realtor organization, which covers all of Utah County and beyond. We are in favor of this tax as we look at the flood of growth we're currently experiencing and the projections that will continue. We recognize the vital importance of infrastructure and transit in our community and managing that growth. So we are absolutely in favor of this, of the commission passing this, and we talks of delaying the vote in order to get the favor of the cities. We're supportive of that. We would, however, like to see it set for a vote so that it's not open-ended and we can get our county those funds that we desperately need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Steve Anderson, Director of Community and Government Relations at Utah Valley University. Just wanted to stand here in support of this as well. We have approximately 40,000 students, primarily a commuter campus that rely on roads and transit. We have seen this year with the implementation of UVX that our parking passes, we've sold 700 fewer passes this year due to that, and we've seen a substantial increase in our ridership on UTA, and so we stand in support of this. Thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioners, I'm Ben Reeves, City Manager of Santaquin, and I just want to put forth, not only is this important for road maintenance and economic development reasons within our county, but with MAG and with COG, I know as a city manager, I send those agendas to our entire city council, and I solicit from them any representation that they may want the mayor to represent when he comes to those meetings, so that the council is fully aware and is engaged in those discussions that MAG and COG have. And I know the other city managers do that as well. And so when we send our mayors to MAG and COG and issue a resolution of support in favor of a tax such as what is proposed, they do come with representation and full backing of our city council. Now, we're very happy to take it back to our city council and get a resolution of support, and we're willing to do that. I know the other cities will as well. But that really does delay the process when we do have an organization set up where the mayors are representing our cities, and they're doing that with the full faith and backing of our councils. And I just want you to be aware of that as well. So.
Thank you.
Commissioners, Josh Walker, I'm the president of the American Fork Chamber and the Pleasant Grove Linden Chambers of Commerce. Just to give an idea, I know Rana had read that letter, and our boards of directors had signed that letter in support of enacting this sales tax. Just to give you an idea, we're not just a bunch of big businesses coming in saying, hey, we don't care where money goes. You know, we have our chair-elect for American Fork is an owner of a small auto body shop on Main Street in American Fork. We have a jewelry company owner. We've got home-based businesses that sit on our boards of directors. We are the voting people in the county, and we came together as the representation of the businesses in American Fork and Pleasant Grove and Linden. Mark Welker called me this morning. We had an extensive conversation about their board in Lehigh for the Lehigh Area Chamber, who represents Lehigh and Saratoga Springs. And we are all in favor of moving forward on enacting this tax sooner rather than later, so that we don't miss out on the funds that would be available. I hear oftentimes that people complain when cities don't act soon enough, and that it will cost the cities later down the road because they're not acting now. And so this is one of those situations or scenarios where we could lose out on a lot of funds that can be used towards road maintenance, towards public transportation. And so we just strongly encourage both, all three of the county commissioners to take a serious look at enacting this for this year as opposed to waiting down the road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pam Jones, Provo. I echo everything that Heidi said, except she forgot the school districts who've always got their hands out for more money. I've taken kind of a mental survey of the people who have commented so far, and it seems like the people who are in favor of the tax are I'm blank, I can't remember. Who was the Prime Minister of Great Britain? Margaret Thatcher. You can't say it enough. Socialism is fine until you run out of other people's money. So these entities who want the tax want to play with other people's money. Sure, give me some money. I'd be happy. But I'm not getting money. I got my notice from Social Security the other day telling me what my monthly payments would be next year. There's a slight increase, yes, but in considering all the new taxes that are coming up, I'm still behind, as in every year. There have been years where we didn't get any increase, and so we get farther and farther behind. I would encourage the commission to think about the regular people, not the ones who get to play with other people's money. And don't kill us with any more taxes.
I'm Robert Stevens, Provo, Utah. It is reasonable to believe that if this was put to a vote to the people, that they would vote against any kind of tax increase. The annual, as I understand, your budget here in the county with income is between 85 and 100 million. You know, if you gave 100 million to your hired servants, would you give them more if you felt that they were wise stewards? And if they didn't prove to be wise stewards, would you want to give them more? And I think the answer is, of course not. UTA's work in Provo has been a disaster. I had a conversation last week, an in-depth discussion with principal broker Richard Stringham of Stringham West Realty, whose business operates at 455 North University Avenue. He told me that his neighbors along University Avenue have seen a reduction of about 50% in their businesses. Why? Because it's almost impossible now for anyone to go across the road. I too live in Provo, and during the peak hours, I see students in the buses, but any other hours, the buses are usually empty. If buses are a good and cost-effective idea, then let's return to our roots and let the free market provide the services. There used to be a train system that went along 200 West. It went from Provo up to Heber. It was operated, as far as I understand, through private industry. It went out of business because, or perhaps it wasn't a cost-effective thing to do. Our country's based upon the idea that let the free market do it. The government should be limited. There shouldn't be theft in the forced redistribution of wealth. How well has that $100 million been spent so far? We have 540 miles of road in our county, and our budget's only $3 million for those roads. You would think that out of $100 million, more money would be allocated for the roads. What is the money all being used for? I would like to see a one-sheet breakdown of all the major expenses in the county and let the people see that and see if they think that the money is being wisely allocated. I know Richard in Public Works would like to see his annual road, his budget will be about $9 million. I know the cost from experience of building a new road is probably about $800,000 a mile. We currently have our state has a housing shortage right now of 43,000 units. Our county is the fastest growing in the state. But is government the answer or is government the problem? How many miles have we allocated in the last decade from that annual amount, or 100 million that we enjoy right now in income for our county, for new sewers? None. For municipal wastewater treatment systems? None. The university here at BYU, NUVU, saw the need that in their area they needed to have a transit system, and UVU by itself allocated about $1 million annually. I suspect at BYU it was similar. Commissioner Lee, you especially, you know the proper role of government. You know it's not through the forced redistribution of wealth. You know that over time, a little bit from the county and more from the city, more from the feds and so forth, is going to drive us all into poverty. If this is a government for and by the people, then let the people vote. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Jeremy Hafen. I'm the chair-elect of the Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce, and will be chairing that next year. And I'm also the president of Sunrock Corporation, which is a locally owned construction company. And, I hear some of the comments being made, and I'm very sensitive to them because in our peak time during the year, we'll employ over 1,000 people in this community. And most of them, 80% of those employees, are hourly workers that are living paycheck to paycheck. So I'm very sensitive to that. And as a corporate citizen and exercising corporate responsibility, we spend a lot of money on helping them have retirement programs, benefits, and everything else that we need to. But we actually in this county have some major traffic problems. It's not going to get any better. And I believe as we look at the growth and development of our community, it's the velocity of that churn of money which will create that prosperity. So we can cut taxes
to nothing, and we can become a Detroit or something like that. But if we push forward and that velocity of money can flow, go back into the pockets of the citizens where they can have disposable income and so on and so forth. And that's what this tax actually helps us do. Which allows us to then build roads, which we are needed for transportation. Another point, I talked to several state legislators recently, and we have federal money, we have state money that we can get more of to help our county, but they want to see the county do their part. They feel like the county's not doing their part to make this happen, and they're specifically telling that. The mayors have signed on in support, so I'm very much in support of this quarter-cent sales tax increase for the prosperity of our community. You mentioned the service level agreement. Let's get it done. Let's get it reviewed. Let's make it happen. You know, we understand you're busy. We're all busy. I've had to take agreements that are the size of these service level agreements and get them done in a matter of days or hours. So let's review them. Let's get them done. Let's get them put in place and finalized quickly. Time is of the essence. If we don't do this before the end of the year, the county and the cities inside the county lose out on millions of dollars that could have been in place going into this into the next year. If we keep kicking this can down the road, I know Commissioner Ainge is in support of it. In my conversations with him, I think we need to get this thing done. We need to stop kicking the can down the road. We've elected you guys as our commissioners so that we don't have to take everything to vote for the citizens. We want you to represent us and represent us well. And so I know where Commissioner Graves stands on this. I have a feel for where Commissioner Lee stands on it. And Mr. Ivey, I'd ask you a question of what do you need in your mind to be able to get this resolved and get this thing done today so we can move this forward?
Well, today will be very difficult to move forward. The biggest thing that I'm concerned with is making sure that we have everything in line with UTA, specifically that service level agreement, and that the people understand that with what we've enacted, with the 40% going to UTA, this is very different than what Prop 1 was. By the time we put those contracts into place, we're securing local control of those things. We're reducing debt, which is a fiscally responsible thing to do, and we're being able to access funding for the number one request I get, and that's better roads. So the number one thing I have people ask for is better roads. This mechanism is the mechanism the state has given the county to do that. But there are some safeguards that I think need to take place, particularly over the 40% portion. I was thrilled to see UTA here today. I was very much in favor and excited to vote for the interlocal agreement that we got with them, because I think that's shifting the dynamic and the history and giving us a chance to improve on that relationship and control the service locally so that we get better service, even in the mass transit portion. Because when we talk about getting to 1 million people in this county, mass transit has to be part of the discussion. That's just a harsh reality, whether we like it or not. I'm a farm guy. I don't like the rapid growth of this county as far as, crushing all of that out. But the reality is it's coming, and if we fail to be properly prepared, and mass transit is a component in an urbanizing county, but I think it's essential that we have that localized control. And a service level agreement, the interlocal agreement, shifts that dynamic for me to where we get that. I just need to make sure that that's accurate and it does that.
Do you feel like you can get there before the end of the year?
I hope so.
Yeah, we do too. And on behalf of all the businesses in this county, representing the Utah Chamber, thank you for your time.
I'm curious. Everyone seems to know my mind, so how do I
guessed. What's that?
So how do I think?
I hope you're in support of it, but when
you said you know how I feel, so I'm wondering how I think.
Okay, so when we sat at a public policy committee meeting at the Utah Valley Chamber several weeks ago, about a month ago, we actually brought this up and proposing to send a letter to the commissioners on behalf of the chamber in support of it. And you mentioned that you were not in favor of it, but maybe you could get to the point where you'd be indifferent. And that's what I heard you mention in that meeting. So that's where it formed my opinion.
So So maybe I'll clarify so that you have a better understanding of where I think. I actually wrote the against on Prop 1 on the ballot. And the reason why I did is because I could feel from the citizens in the community, not that we don't need road funding. I can see that. I can see those numbers. I can see what's there. But the UTA portion of it was not palatable to the people in Utah County at all. And they did not see the need for, sending more money that direction. And so I did. I wrote the against on Prop 1. That failed. The people voted on that thing. The overarching, though, this has been a problem ever since I've come into office. When you're a businessman, when do you ever give somebody $43 million without an understanding of how it's going to happen and where it's going to go to? I would think that you would never do that. That would be a cardinal sin. Utah County is doing that right now. $43 million goes to UTA without an understanding, without any control that we feel is needed and necessary. So with that in mind, and seeing that kind of money going in that direction, there's more of an overarching ability to say, let's go after more local control, like Commissioner Ivey said. It's important to us to have that service level agreement in place and to have it in place that we can agree with, not just necessarily for the fourth quarter, but for everything that we're sending money to, because we just don't do it on a contractual basis. I think that the citizens need to weigh in. They weighed in on this. It was overwhelming the way that they voted on this issue, and to jump past the citizens on this thing and say, oh no, we're just going to implement it anyway. I think as a representative of the citizens in this community, that would be a mistake, and I think it'd be a travesty if we do. We've been working hard to change the dilemma, the dynamics of what it looks like, because if it's Prop 1 of old, I think it fails miserably again. We've been working to change that so it can at least be looked at in a palatable way and say we've brought back local control. We also brought back a service level agreement with the $43 million that is currently being spent out of Utah County on transit, and that's where we're at. That's what we're trying to do. I've been working hard to do that. In some cases, I get painted as complete no way, not on this at all. I was on the 40% on Prop 1. I wasn't on the 60, but that 40% needed to have some changes to it. So we've been working towards that. So hopefully that gives you a little better idea of where I'm at as a commissioner.
I appreciate that. So are you saying you are then willing to move this thing forward?
I'm willing to go through the process that we have in place, and I would like to see it on the ballot.
Okay, I would highly recommend that we've got 20 days till the end of the month. Let's get the service level agreement reviewed. You've got a copy of it. Let's get it reviewed, get it in place, and make this quarter cent stick so we can get the millions of dollars into next year that we need. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to weigh in, since my fellow commissioners did. I'd like to remind everybody as they're making comments, and that way they can come up and address this. But I too appreciate, I believe his first name was Norm, and I hope I heard that correctly since I'm on my phone, laborer and his wife. But in his comments, when he was talking about tax, he actually said, me and my neighbors want better roads and better conditions. That's what this is. Unlike the property tax increase that we will debate tomorrow night, and it's important these are kept very separate, growth actually does not help this situation. It hurts unless we do enact more taxes for transportation. We hear people talking about how businesses can't get access and people can't turn across. Not enacting money for these transportation projects exacerbate that problem and put more people out of business, because more people will quit driving downtown when they have to take 47 minutes from Provo Town Center to get to University Mall to do shopping everywhere along the way, for example. That's what this does. By delaying that, it does. And you know, my other problem is when we talk about representative form of government, where we have just gotten away from that. I appreciate and I do respect Commissioner Lee and his opinion. When everybody says I hear his mind, I don't want to speak and say I hear his mind. I just hear his words. And Commissioner Lee, your words say that you if we can get to there on the agreements, which agree, I have no doubt that you and Commissioner Ivey will get those agreements done in place. I have 100% trust because I've seen what you've done with this for the last year. But after you said that, you said, and then we will put it on the ballot, and I will not speak for or against. If you're going to work really hard for something that you believe in as a representative, which I know you do, and you campaigned on transit and its important component, I think what people are hearing is they want to hear you take a stance and talk about the good things and the bad things. And so I do hear them, so that's why I say I have a lot of different understanding than the public does with Commissioner Lee, and do have great respect for him in that regard. But where this is not a growth component that helps, but it hurts because growth doesn't help us, that's why these things need to be enacted today. My final comment on this is when we talk about representative form of government, if we are just going to send everything to the people, we don't need a commission. We just need ballot initiatives, and we just need referendums all the time. We can eliminate the county form of government and just put everything on the ballot, because there are things that we need to do as elected representatives. We've all ran trying to improve the county. This is the one tax that actually always improves the county, because while part of it pays down debt, the other eliminates future debt by doing projects now. Every time we build a house or a road or anything today, the future savings is great. And that's why delay. We've delayed this, but there's a reason we delayed. We worked hard on getting the interlocal agreement. That got done. The service level agreement will get done. Again, we've had it in our email for several months. And so we have an opportunity with all of our attorneys to do that and get it done. So anyway, those are just my thoughts at this point.
Okay, we do have some additional public comment.
Just briefly, it was
Just restate your name, I'm sorry.
Donna Boyd.
Thank you.
It was suggested that Sunrock is the one who would get the contracts to build the roads. If that is the case, isn't that not a conflict of interest? And then we also have the question of, with all the growth, we've had evidence of that growth with the increase in traffic, and it seems to me that all the high-rise apartments are filling up with people. Aren't every one of those people paying taxes? Does that not increase the tax base for whatever? And then we've given a $65 million tax break to a millionaire corporation, the Woodbury Corporation. The whole thing seems kind of out of whack. So where's all the new revenue from all the new people moving in, which is called the growth, which we seem to be inviting the growth? Isn't that money sufficient to take care of some of these needs that we have?
Thank you.
I'd like to address that, I guess. The answer is no, that actually doesn't help it, because what you're talking about in those high-rise apartments and people moving in is property tax. And property tax is what we fund the day-to-day operations of the county, the health department, the drug and substance abuse, the county manages on that, our mental health, our law enforcement. That's what those people pay for. This is a user tax. This is a tax that goes directly for transportation needs of the community. So that's why people moving into an apartment or a home, they don't pay it. They don't pay this tax. For example, if a student moves in and rides his bike everywhere and, never shopped online, or they would never pay this tax. It's completely user tax. So in that case, that's where growth doesn't help. The other thing that I just forgot when Mr. Stevens talked about the county budget in the line item, all of those road funds right now are being paid out of on our county budget. Well, I shouldn't say all. The majority of them are out of our general fund. This tax actually would eliminate a need for that, expand the road budget that Richard has actually been asking for many years. He has claimed for a shortage all 4 years. He's got a master plan that he's put together that shows a deficiency. And enacting this tax would actually create a decrease in need in property taxes going forward as well.
Thank you. We have additional public comment.
I'm Heather Williamson, Saratoga Springs resident. Also, I am the State Director for Americans for Prosperity in Utah. We have a petition that was signed by over 200, Utah County taxpayers and households of families that are against this sales tax increase. I'm happy to send to you as well. And so I speak on behalf of them and myself as well as a taxpayer in Utah County. I'm grateful to hear that you're trying to be wise stewards on this issue specifically, and that you're looking at the service level agreement, which would be more local control. I know taxpayers are concerned about, UTA's lack of fiscal responsibility, being $2 billion in debt with taxpayer funds. That's not necessarily being very good stewards. And so, looking at that, and also, looking at bringing it to taxpayers, bringing the issue to allow individuals to vote on this issue, I think is imperative, or at the very least, allowing for, maybe town hall or more input from the community. I don't know how many individuals are aware, of this issue necessarily. We're trying to do our best to get the word out. I know you guys have been as well, but I would ask that you, take this to, the taxpayers again and allow them to vote on this issue. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Richard Brunst, Mayor of Orem. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. As we had mentioned and has been mentioned, the regional planning meeting, we had a series of mayors within the county all vote to pass a resolution to encourage you to enact this tax. There's a reason behind that. We as public elected officials are charged with providing goods and services for the residents in the way of safety, in the way of roads, water, etc. That takes money to do that. This particular tax is one that would be basically a quarter for every $100 spent. It's a sales tax, so those who come into our community to use our services, drive on our roads, pay for the use of those roads. I feel like this is a good tax. I'm not in favor of taxes necessarily, but I am in favor of funding the operations of our cities to provide the services that our citizens require. So when our citizens in Orem get up in the morning and go out on the road, they expect the road to be plowed, they expect the potholes to be filled, they expect the water to be delivered, the sewer water to be treated, they expect the storm water to be taken away from their houses, they expect fire and police to be there and available as quickly as possible. Those cost money, and this is what this is about. I would like to quote someone from an article in the Daily Herald, and this particular gentleman is the Public Works Director of the Utah County. His name is Richard Nielsen. I'd just like to read a little bit of it here. It says, the Utah County Public Works Department is asking Utah County for an additional $2.5 million from the general fund for 2017. This article was written in October of 2016, or approximately 2 years ago. Says, as Utah County continues budget discussions with department heads, the commissioners are keeping in mind the possibility of a property tax increase in the near future to meet additional costs associated with Utah County's rapid growth. As we know, we have explosive growth facing us. We have to deal with that. That is part of our fiduciary responsibility, that we take care of the growth that's coming our way. Public Works is one of the county's largest departments, overseeing such necessities as roads, parks, engineering, and telecommunications. Over the past few years, Public Works Director Richard Nielsen said his department has been operating at a minimal level, putting off projects that now need to be addressed. Continuing to put off some of those projects, Nielsen said, could turn the county's assets into liabilities. A lot of our maintenance items have been deferred over the last few years, he states. As we continue to defer those items, we'll see higher and higher costs in trying to bring the facilities, whether it's the buildings, the parks, or the roads, back to the level that they should be to maintain them, so that we're protecting the investment the county has. Nielsen specifically mentioned the county roads, of which the county is responsible for maintaining 540 centerline miles of roads as an example. And I believe the budget for that is approximately $3 million in the county. $2 of preventive maintenance, he states, early on will cost you $12 to $16 in rehabilitation costs if you wait until you are near the end of the life of the pavement. So the idea we're trying to get to in getting dollars on the roads is we want to be able to do preventive maintenance early on. Nielsen requested in 2016 that $2.5 million that his department currently has for manpower and equipment be funded through the county's general fund. That way Public Works has $2.5 million to use for road maintenance and materials instead. So to be pulling money out of the general fund for the road maintenance takes money away from public safety, takes money away from sewer, water, which we've already heard about. The additional funds requested from the restaurant tax, which he brings up, and then he goes on. He states the county has all of these various needs, and we need to get back to using the money in the proper way. My opinion is, if in fact this money, if this were passed, if this tax were passed, that would actually double your road fund within the county. By doubling the road fund within the county, you would not have to be pulling money out of the general fund. Accordingly, you would not have to you would have no need to raise the property taxes. I believe this would be a prudent way to do this. I believe this would be a proper way to do it. And I believe that that money is being raised through people who are using services throughout the county. So Envision Utah did a survey, and in that survey of leaders and stakeholders and residents in Utah County, they found the #1 issue is roads and transportation. We know there's explosive growth going on. MAG did a survey a small survey of people within the county to find out if all the money from the quarter-cent sale tax was used for roads. In fact, 60 to 65% of the people said they support that. So I believe it's important to move forward with this. I would ask the commission to move forward with it. $22 million is the amount of money that is raised through this. And when you look at the roads and the things that we have to do, we in the cities are underfunded by at least 50%. We have a very hard time keeping up with it. And this is a tool the legislature has given us from those people who buy goods and services to go ahead and raise that money to pay for the maintenance of our roads. So I would encourage you to go ahead and pass this, and I would encourage that by doing this, you would not need to have a property tax increase. Thank you.
Thank you.
Heidi Baldery. What I'm hearing is a lot of desperation, and I don't think that it's imagined. I feel like some of that's real, but learning from history, historically, our best decisions are not made under desperate circumstances. The Washington Post in March 24th, 2018, published an article talking about the decline of transit ridership and public transportation. And they said that transit ridership has fallen in 31 of 35 major metropolitan areas. And the empty buses that are witnessed by those in this room and anyone who's being honest are, I think, speak to that. Our city may be growing, but other options, and it talks about in this, it says researchers concluded factors such as lower fuel costs, increased teleworking, higher car ownership, and the rise of alternatives such as Uber and Lyft are pulling people off trains and buses at record levels. 31 out of 35 metropolitan areas. I know our Utah County is becoming this urban metropolitan area that we talk about. Also, I think it would be wise to parcel some of it. It sounds like a majority of the council is in favor of the sales tax increase. My concern is that, again, acting in desperation, you're willing, or anyone is willing to accept out of desperation something they might not be willing to on a non-desperate day. And I feel that this 40% of the sales tax increase revenue that would go to UTA needs to be looked at separately. That would be my recommendation to the commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Ivey, Commissioner Lee, Commissioner Graves on the phone, wherever you are. Grateful to be here and join you this morning. Honored to have a chance to visit briefly. My name is Ben Stanley. I'm one of 2 nominees Utah County has put forward to serve on the Utah Transit Authority's Board of Trustees. And one of the things that I have appreciated hearing this morning is a willingness to make sure that we do things in wisdom and order. I think in many cases that's what separates moderate leadership from great leadership, is doing things in the right order and making sure that we have things put together in the way that will best serve our public. If we were to move forward without having representation on UTA's board, if we were to move forward without service level agreements completed, without resolutions from cities, I think it would be a tremendous disservice to the public and the people of Utah County. So I appreciate that I've been hearing that, this desire to make sure that we have taken full advantage of our bargaining chips and gotten the best results we possibly can for our citizenry. And I encourage you to continue down that path. I think that makes a lot of sense. There are some incentives the legislators have given us to make this more attractive than Proposition 1, and there's been tremendous work that the three of you have done to make it more attractive in a different situation than it was when Proposition 1 was on the ballot, and I applaud that effort. Cannot thank you enough for the good service you do, and I'd like to just share that input with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Nelson, Public Works Director. Now, I didn't know I was going to be quoted, but thank you, Mayor. And you've heard me talk about this before in different budget meetings, as the Mayor alluded to from a couple of years ago. This is something, especially on the 20% that would come to the county, that would be a big improvement for us on our road maintenance program, trying to help keep those assets that we have as a county, the many miles of road that we try to maintain, try to keep those in good working order. As the county continues to grow, we have increased traffic. The other portions of the proposed tax, with the 40% going to the cities and the county through the MAG process for projects, there's a huge need. I think Andrew had kind of mentioned that on what the need is out there for the construction projects that would happen, that would need to go forward to try to keep up with the growth. The transit is a big component of it as well, as we move forward and look at how much the county will potentially grow over the next 10, 15, 20 years. We have to have a transit component to make all of the transportation system work. And I think I applaud you guys for working with UTA and trying to get to where we have some local control of that. I think that's moving in a good direction. And I appreciate your work on this. Thanks.
Hey, Richard.
You bet.
You stepped up there, so hopefully you didn't step in it, because I'm going to ask you some questions.
Sure.
I'll remind you of back when we were in a MAG finance meeting, and he had a chart, and it was talking about the millions of dollars that were needed for road projects and road funding. And I'm all for roads. I think I want to make sure that's clear. I think everything comes across the road. All of our services, all of our goods, roads are the highest priority as I look at it when it comes to transportation and commodity services here in the county. So with that though, I was very confused when it appeared like numbers were being put together to push items. For instance, when the fourth quarter cent sales tax, or the first quarter, Prop 1 was put forward, the numbers were really high. This is what we need. We've got to have this road funding. But if I back up and I go back to when we're talking about the BRT system, and we're talking about money coming out of the third quarter cent sales tax, in which traditionally that has been for roads.
Correct.
I heard over and over and over from mayors and others, we're fine until 2028. When we get paid back, and then we'll have this influx of cash that can go into roads. And so therefore we can take money away from roads and put it towards a system, another system, which complements transportation, and I get that. But nevertheless, I heard it over and over that we're okay. We're funded appropriately. And then all of a sudden, here comes Prop 1, and now we're not okay. Now everything's gone to whatever.
Yep.
And now we have to reanalyze everything and get road projects back on track, because now there's a new funding source that we can go after, and the narrative seems to change. And then second, and this is hopefully not a sore spot for you, but I have been asking ever since I've been in office for Commissioner Graves mentioned a master plan. All I want to be able to see is where's the roads that are below a 5? Or where's the roads that we have that are above? How can I budget? I can budget a lot better if I say this road is gonna get below, so we have to go into the base, and that's gonna cost us 10 times as much. I get that, but I've never been able to see that yet as we're trying to work towards our 540, and now not all that's paved. I mean, we
Correct.
have
There's about
200.
there's about 350 that's
Yeah,
paved.
350 that's paved. I've never seen that yet, because I can budget even for a long term if I know where we're at, but I don't even know where we're at. It seems like we're pulling numbers out of the air to fit a narrative.
Right, and you and I had that conversation a couple of weeks ago about the roads program and what we've been looking at. We've had some recent conversations on other software aspects that we could look at to get to where we can provide you that information. We have a program that we can use that does not provide us the data that we want it in the form that we want it in, that we feel is usable for how we move forward. We do have a software program that we use and try to analyze that. We do rely a lot on our roads professionals to analyze that, our engineering department and our roads crew, to say, okay, here's where we're seeing the needs. They do go out and do a physical investigation on those roads each year to try to analyze that. We don't have it in a form where we can pull it up like what you're saying, but we do have analysis of it that we look at. To go back to with the discussion on Prop 1, you know, I wasn't part of the discussion on pulling the money in for UTA. With that, said, okay, we're good out to 2028. I'm sure there was some discussion about that. The thing I look at is that the maintenance needs are ongoing. You know, whether we have a project that pushes it out a ways or not, those maintenance dollars for whether it's the county or any of the cities, we have a constant maintenance need. Now, a project could be pushed off a number of years possibly if we're saying, okay, I need to go from a 2-lane road to a 4-lane road. I can see where that could be a potential, so I can hold off on that and push that down the road. But the maintenance needs, from the minute you put that asphalt or concrete on the ground, it starts to deteriorate. So it's something that realistically, the longer you put it off to maintain it, the more it's gonna cost you, and you mentioned that as well.
Sometimes faster than others if things happen,
Correct.
like we talked about yesterday.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, all I'd like to see is I'd like to see a master plan that says we have 540, 40 miles of roads, and we have this, and we've got so many sections that are above 7s, we have so many sections that are at the 6, we got 6.5s, we got 5s, we have some at 9s,
And
whatever,
we're working
and
towards
this is
getting
where
that as
we're
well,
looking
so.
at.
Any other questions for me? Okay, thanks.
So I would like to give you a tiny bit of cover for a change, because normally I'm the one hammering you. You have been, if you go back and look at the 2017 budget discussions, you have been asking for that software program for maintenance for at least the last 2 budget cycles. So that is something that, you know, maybe the commission shares a little bit in the last year, but the master plan I was referring to, by the way, is the prospectus, the 5 to 10 year plan that I asked everybody to give that has been out there that everybody else could see. So the other thing that I would like you to address, Richard, as a county. So let's say the county takes no action and cities go and enact that. What's the portion you would get in the future for the county?
My understanding is that if for how it's proposed today, we'd have the 40% to UTA, the 40% to the cities and counties for projects, and 20% to the county. If the cities enact it, it would be a 50% to UTA and 50% to the cities and county for projects. We would not have the 20% that would be the county portion of it, is my understanding.
Okay. I think that's an important point for everybody there to understand is the cities are going to enact this. They've been talking about the need for 4 years. And so the reality is it's Utah County residents that hurt and miss on funding and all this hard work that Commissioner Lee and Commissioner Ivey both have put in on this legislation, this ILA, the service level agreement, all of those things, all goes for naught, because if this thing is not passed basically now so that the collection can start, it will go to the cities, they'll enact it, and it will be a 50-50 split. And Provo and Orem, which combined make up roughly 50% of the sales tax collected, and it's not quite, but it's close. So half of that money collected, $11 million roughly, $6 million of it, five and a half to be exact on an 11, would go to UTA without that protection and without repaying the bond. So I think we need to focus in on all of the facts here. And again, the county portion goes to zero. So we would have to continue all of the county road funds out of property tax. Now, when Commissioner Lee and I first came in, there was a project through MAG, and I'll even let Andrew address it if he wants it, a sore subject for this county and for Cedar Hills and Pleasant Grove. We got through it, the 100 East heading up to American Fork Canyon up to Timp Cave. And the reality is when everybody talks about quarter-cent funding, I think everybody needs to understand the roads you're used to driving on, the county plays a completely different function in our county than the cities. The cities have a different road standard than the counties. And we know because many Pleasant Grove residents and Cedar Hills residents and their city councils were appalled and mad at how the county's road standards are. Well, the county's road standards are adequate and substantiated by engineering for the traffic and things like that, but we don't do certain things that cities want. That's why the cities have different needs, and so they were really upset with 100 East when the county comes in and we don't put in curb and gutters and street parking. We just end the asphalt and give you the drive lanes and chip seal them every other year because that's the budget we have and that's what we can do to maintain. So I think that's important for the public to understand that those things happen when it does. The other thing I wanted to mention that I forgot, and I apologize because I'm heading back there so I can be in person for tomorrow. And this doesn't really go for Richard. There was a comment earlier made at Sunrock, and I would just like to say this. A couple of years ago in a MAG meeting, Wilford Clyde, who I've known my entire life, a great man, sat there as mayor of Springville City when we were discussing BRT and funding and things like that. He did make a comment on that, but also going to his integrity and the integrity of the company, which Jeremy is there representing, actually said, I will make a comment on this in general, but I will abstain because I am going to bid on these projects. He's not guaranteed them, but he does bid on them. And so I think it's important as a resident to understand they still have an opinion as a resident, but they have a lot of respect and integrity to stand up and admit in a public meeting and state those things and then recuse themselves from a vote. So I think that's important to understand that we really do have really good partners here. And that's why I'm so supportive of this tax. Not only do we have those good partners, but I want to see the good hard work that Commissioner Lee and Commissioner Ivey have put forth on this followed through and done, because otherwise we will have wasted all these times and efforts with UTA. This fight will be for naught, and they'll have more money to do that which they want without the county control because it will be enacted by the cities.
Andrew Jackson, just to address your question, Commissioner Lee, on the BRT project, when that was put in, there were no projects that were currently on the schedule that would be delayed because of BRT. And in fact, because BRT was delayed, we were actually able to do about $6 million more of projects than we had originally thought, which picked up an Eagle Mountain project. The big issue, I think, is because in the second quarter, 59-12-22-16, and the third quarter, 59-12-22-18, they don't allow that maintenance portion. So when you hear the city say, we need more money for maintenance, we need more money for maintenance, regardless of BRT and the use of the third quarter cent for BRT, there would be no maintenance portion because state law expressly, state law does not permit maintenance as a portion of the third quarter. That's why the fourth quarter is that maintenance quarter. So the fourth quarter, you can do everything that you can do in the third quarter plus maintenance, but that third quarter never had that maintenance component to it. So I think, and that's what Richard alluded to a little bit with the projects can be delayed, but maintenance is a tough one to delay, and that's where that is. Additionally, on the funding for the fourth quarter, and you asked that question of Richard, or no, actually I think it was Commissioner Graves that asked that. All of the money received prior to July 1st of 2019 is not part of the interlocal agreement, but that goes directly to the county. So if you did enact it prior to January 1st, you notify the tax commission puts it in, it goes into effect April 1st. The county would receive approximately $2 million per month, so about $6 million. That would be straight, 100% of that tax would go straight to the county to go into your road fund. The interlocal agreement doesn't go into effect until July 1st of 2019. So if it's not enacted prior to that, it doesn't matter. But the only one who loses funding between now and July 1st of 2019 is the county, and that's about $6 million. Additionally, if it goes to a city vote in 2020, let's say half the cities enact it in 2020, but the other half don't, the county still has until 2022 that they can enact it in the other half of the cities in the county. If you have 100% enactment by the cities prior to the county enacting it, there is no option in state law currently for the county to enact it just in the unincorporated area. So you would have to, in order for the county to get it, once the cities put it in, it has to be where there are some cities that haven't. And any cities that put it in prior to the county enacting it, it stays at that 50-50 split. The county doesn't get any portion of that. And you've got the handouts I've given several times about where that money comes from and which place it would come from and what would you get on that. So I just want to clarify.
And the interlocal would be void.
Yes, the interlocal is based on a countywide taxation purpose.
I can say a few more things if I may.
Again, just repeat your name for the record, please.
Well, my name is Robert Stevens. I live in Provo. So I just built a road. I took 102 acres, 18 lots, for my 3/4 mile of road. It was about $600,000, about $33,000, $300 per lot. This is a very, very low traffic lot, a road, but your policies are such that now everybody has to maintain that road in perpetuity. What does it cost? For the first 7 years, according to Richard Nielsen, when I interviewed him one day, and he's sincere, by the way, no road maintenance. And then you have to do a slurry seal. After 28 or 30 years, they have to overlay the asphalt with 2 or 3 inches of new asphalt. Our nation has 4 million miles of roads. It's estimated that the cost of redoing these roads and maintaining them and getting them up to par now is about $800 billion. There's no doubt that we need money for roads. I also have no doubt that in some future time, roads are just going to be markers and we won't even need asphalt roads anymore. I think technology will evolve, but that's not the situation right now. The issue at hand is, as you've seen, all the people say, no new taxes, we're already suffering. And yet all the people in government, well, almost all the people in government are saying, this is what we got to do, hurry, 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 let's get it done. And then you're mixing it all together, separated everything. I think the citizens would actually vote for more money being used in road. What I would like to have happen is this adjourned for 1 week, and every one of us honestly take a survey of a dozen individuals in the county and say, knowing that our budget in the county is $100 million, what percentage of money do you think should be spent on roads? And my guess is a quarter. And so then I ask, why has only $3 million been used for roads up until now? And if only $3 million has been used, then are you proper stewards of the money, and why should we give you any more? Thank you very much.
Okay, is there any additional public comment? Not seeing any there. I'll go ahead and bring it back up here to the bench for further discussion, as mentioned from me earlier, I would like to see a continuance on this item, particularly in relationship to the meeting we had with COG and for further review with UTA on the service level agreement. My anticipation would be a week or 2 weeks would probably be preferable for that.
So Commissioner Ivey, sorry. I have no problem, as customary, as Commissioner Lee has stated before. We do like to honor requests of each of the commissioners. I think that is absolutely prudent. And so I'm more than willing to move this back for a week. I would like this to be discussed as part of our property tax tomorrow, because it does have a significant impact on the overall budget. And so I think we need to consider that. And although they are two very separate issues, when it comes to property taxes and general fund, I think it's important that we be prepared to talk to the public tomorrow on this. But I'm ready to move forward on a continuation as well for 1 week. Because 2 weeks from now is Christmas and we don't have commission meeting.
Yeah, I know that a tax is a tax is a tax, and people pay taxes, but I think they are two different issues. And we haven't noticed as a property tax increase. It's not that you can't bring it up and talk about it. I just wonder if, I don't know, I guess anybody could bring it up and talk about it if they wanted to. But I have a hard time sometimes mixing them together. But again, you could bring it up and talk about it all you wanted.
Sure. What I should be more specific on is if this tax were enacted or implemented, there is a significant portion of monies that go to public works, and so that money would be able to be reallocated into our general budget. And what I'm talking about is the overall. When we talk about, for example, last week at the hearing, you talked about you had a plan for how much money, and we all have an idea of how much money going forward. That's what I'm talking about as far as whether or not there will be a property tax increase, whether one would even be needed if we were to enact this tax. And that's the part of the discussion. I mean, when we talk real numbers, because our property tax increase is also tied into our budget increase. That's why I made that comment.
You know, I'll state it again for me, even with the service level agreement signed, which I think is we need to work through, and I think we need to be diligent in working through that service level agreement. My anticipation would be to vote for it to go on the ballot to bring the people along. I think that since they have already voted once on this thing, that it seems like it'd be significant enough for us to take it back there. So, I mean, if the other commissioners want to put it back on the agenda to talk again and talk about it, that's fine. Or I just defer to the other commissioners on what they'd like to do with this, because I would like to see it, to strike it from the agenda. And I know Commissioner Graves, you said you'd put it back on, so I don't know why we'd strike it just so you can put it back on. We'd just continue it for a week if that's the case, so that we don't have to go through that process. But my preference is that we continue to work on the service level agreement, and then with a full anticipation of putting it on the ballot for the people to weigh in.
I would go ahead and entertain a motion at this time if there's no further discussion.
Well,
I will move that we can. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll second that. Continue on 1 week if that's what it is.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to take that as a motion and a second for continuance of 1 week. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion will carry 3-0. Okay. I have got. It's number 4. The next on our agenda item is regular agenda item number 6. This is to look at adopting or denying an ordinance to amend the following sections of Utah County Land Use Ordinance. And those are sections 5-3 and 5-4 related to the requirements for lot coverage percentage for accessory structures. Go ahead and turn some time to Greg here and update us on this.
Greg Robinson from Community Development. Thank you for your time, Commissioners. This ordinance amendment was requested by a resident of unincorporated Utah County. It is a proposal to change the amount of square footage allowed by our ordinance for accessory structures, ag structures, and greenhouses. The Planning Commission reviewed this recently in their last meeting and approved or recommended approval of staff's proposal. The changes would affect the TR and RR5 zone. They would allow for 10% of the lot to be covered by those accessory structures, ag structures, or greenhouses. And there would be a maximum building size of 5,000 square feet. This proposal was developed through the research of previous building permits for over the past year to get the averages for staff's recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions on this item?
Yes.
Yes, I have one, sorry.
Go ahead.
My question is, we currently have an ordinance for 20% green space, even when there's adjoining parcels, and I've asked for a planning commission to review that, and I know it's on the next agenda. How does this differ when you say the 10% in total? I'm missing the distinction on how and what we're requiring for development on that.
I'm not. Can you explain more of the green space that your requirement that you're talking about?
So there's a text amendment that I've had proposed to put before the Planning Commission that talks about 20% open space of each of the projects. So, for example, if somebody's doing a development, we require 20%. So let's say the same landowner owns 3 parcels. We require,
we'll need to reopen
based
the
on
door,
parcel
please.
rather than the entire development, the 20% for each, and so we're requiring more. So then all of a sudden, when we're going to 10% in a different zone, I'm just wondering why we're not applying the same standard of percentage and open space and green space or whatever we want to call it for every situation for the county.
This is Bryce Armstrong with staff. Commissioner Graves is referring to an open space requirement for planned subdivisions, which is scheduled to be heard at the Planning Commission next Tuesday. This is independent of that. This is relative to each lot, whether it's a platted subdivision or not, and this solely relates to lot coverage of that available lot area. And so if you have a situation that's in a subdivision that has open space that's dedicated elsewhere, this is only referring to the percentage of lot coverage of that lot.
Will you just talk about the 1,000 and the 2,000 square foot? You're eliminating that. You're striking that out, and you're going to a percentage instead. And why would you strike that out and go to a percentage instead? And then also, why 10%? I mean, I understand that you're trying to match cities with it, but why not 20? Why not 30? Why not 40? What's the reasoning behind a 10?
Sure. First of all, this only affects the TR and the RR5 zones. The TR and the RR5 zone are residential zones, different from what we typically have in the county with agricultural uses. That doesn't mean that they don't have agricultural uses associated with those lots. The couple of reasons why we went first to address the current ordinance, the 1,000, 2,000 limitation. There have been several complaints brought up by residents who are applying for some of those ag or accessory structures. The current ordinance only that separates those uses, so there can only be a certain amount of square footage for each of those uses. That limitation has been cumbersome for some certain residents that want to just do accessory structures or just do agricultural structures or of that nature. That has resulted in kind of this issue of being restricted on those uses versus the current proposal would combine all the uses into one total percentage of coverage. That would allow them to do all of that in ag or all of that in accessory, all of that in greenhouses, whatever they choose to do, without being limited to a square footage as we currently are limited.
So you really see that as freeing them up for more flexibility with their usage?
It does. And the reason behind some of the numbers that I developed, first, the reason I went with 10% was, one, because it matches some of the current ordinances for a lot of the surrounding jurisdictions of the RR and TR5 zones. Those numbers also came because the current ordinance, or the current building permits that we've issued over the past year, and I think I included that in some of the submittals, haven't shown that there's been a huge request for anything larger than that on average. There have been certain circumstances that there are requests for larger buildings, but those are in the RA or the M and G1 zones, which don't have applicable uses in this area, and they've been on parcels over 20 acres. So the reasons that we came up with some of these numbers kind of to match what's currently being requested, and also originally the ordinance that was introduced was there because there was an issue with a parcel that was near Provo that had put in an 18,000 square foot building next to half-acre lots, which caused some issues, which resulted in the original ordinance. So those are some of the reasons.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought in reading through the presentations and slides and everything, there was a suggestion that 15% may be a compromise number, because I think their request is 40, right? And so there was, so explain to me then, if 15% is a compromise number, why?
Sure. The compromise was suggested by staff. It was not considered by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission was fine with the 10%. And I think that's justified by kind of the data that we collected that basically shows that the average person in the county in those, especially, well, there are no limitations on those structures in the RA or any of the other zones besides the TR and the RR5, or the RR5 zones. And even without a restriction on any of those sizes, there's still not a need for larger and more percentage coverage. So that's why we went with those numbers.
Bryce with staff again. The other distinction I'd like to make is the applicant's proposal of 40% included the calculation of their single-family dwelling, and staff's proposal did not include that. And so we weren't counting that house, the dwelling, as part of that percentage.
I read that. So what would it be without the single-family dwelling? What's the difference? What's the difference in a percentage there?
Well, it depends on the size of your lot. I think we have a table there that kind of gives you examples of the different sizes. A lot of the footprints we're seeing in the county are 2,000-3,000 square foot footprint, which is how this is worded. And so, that's going to, on a smaller lot, that's a pretty significant percentage.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
At the end of the day, I think we feel that this kind of captures what we're seeing and what kind of the concerns we're getting. A lot of people have the concerns with the ability to not have, for example, less than 1 acre. You're only limited to a max size of 1,000 square feet, whether that's one building or dispersed among multiple. This takes away that, and say you have an acre or just under an acre, you have up to 4,000 plus square feet. You can either utilize as one building or several, and that was the challenge that we were seeing, that people wanted a little more flexibility in that overall size of one structure. Try and capture that. So.
Okay. Any additional questions or discussion?
Yeah, I just had one. The link for the Planning Commission minutes would not load up on my agenda login. Just curious, did they vote unanimously to support this, or was there a dissenting opinion?
Yeah, yes, I believe it was a unanimous 5-0 recommendation for approval.
Yes.
For the 10%?
Correct.
Okay.
Is there any member of the public who'd wish to comment to this item?
Hi, I'm Helena Carter Thomas. I'm actually the applicant. And I made this application just based off of not my own personal needs. I do live in the RR5 zone. I've also lived in the RA5 zones, and I own property in both. But in talking with Commissioner Lee, we had kind of discussed some things that had been going on where you were going through the RR5 zones and maybe considering doing away with some of them and just going through. And I just thought, well, if this is the problem, maybe this is a better way to go about accomplishing some change that would benefit instead of having to go through, you know, all of the zones. And so as I read it, the way it was quite restrictive. And I'm not wanting to see a lot of buildings or coverage, but what I see is still some large agricultural properties within the RR5 zones, and also just large, I guess, you know, in the RR5 zones, I get that it's residential, but it's also rural, and there are agricultural uses. So I think it's unfortunate that for those properties that still meet, you know, kind of agricultural size criteria, that they can't build buildings that would help them to utilize their property. And that's kind of what I was seeing. I don't really agree with staff on the research that I've done. I would say that it's more like 20%. That's just my opinion, and we did do a lot of research on other counties and the municipalities around. I understand the annexation problem and the building that was in Provo that created a problem, but I feel like buildings can be torn down if that's really that important for the property to be annexed at some point. And I'm not really the 40%. The reason why I did that was because I certainly don't want to see 40% coverage on like a 5-acre parcel or a 20-acre parcel or a 50-acre parcel. However, when you have in the RR5 zone, you know, we've got some 1/4-acre parcels or 1/2-acre parcels. And so, you know, it would be nice. I don't think that 40% on a smaller lot, like a 1-acre parcel or less, would be out of line to allow someone to be able to, you know, have a barn and their home and maybe a detached garage or something. And so that's why I said the 40%. I certainly wouldn't, you know, and I just opened it up for discussion. So I'm glad you guys are looking at it, and I hope you can come up with something that makes sense. I don't really like the 5,000 cap, just because, you know, I'm a horse person, and I know Nate is, and, you know, I mean, if we build a barn or a riding arena, which there are properties in the R5 zone that would be beautiful horse properties, that someone would love to build a large barn on, maybe a riding arena or a large horse barn, and you wouldn't be able to do that. So I'm not in favor of the 5,000 cap, but I'm fine with the 10% or 20% or whatever you guys decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any additional public comment? Seeing none, I will bring it back up to the bench for further discussion. I actually agree with the applicant on the cap. I think the percentage is a great way to go with that, so I would fully support this, especially if we remove that portion. Yeah.
So I agree with both your comments, especially because as a commission we sit on the Fairgrounds Board and know what a need her last comment actually is for riding arenas and riding spaces, since our facility joint with Spanish Fork is always busy and always booked, and so I don't know why we would cap it as well.
Bryce Armstrong, staff. One distinction we want to make is riding arenas are not an allowed use in the RR5 and TR5 zone. But we do see those. Those are our largest structures, accessory structures we see, and those are permitted in their agricultural zones without limitation. And so that's kind of the thinking on that. Again, we have the justification on those numbers of what we're seeing as far as permits being issued relative to size. We talked to Cleary. A lot of people use Cleary as their builder, and a lot of that's related to truss size also. In speaking with the building official, they use a standard 30-foot truss span. And once you get it expanded beyond that, it gets pretty significant in construction costs, and so a lot of people go with that smaller size, and this seems to kind of match those trends.
So Bryce, what I heard you say is it sounds like we know what's going to be on the next Planning Commission agenda, because I don't know why we would limit anybody in either of those zones from doing exactly what was just talked about. And so I'm still prepared to move forward with no cap, knowing it sounds like we have some work to send this back to Planning Commission to amend that zone would be my overall proposal on this.
I guess their thought is to still keep a cap and maybe have it higher if that's something that we can negotiate. But,
for me, the percentage is a cap that keeps it in balance.
I agree. Size. There's, it's problematic. We went through a whole zoning, looking at all the zones because of interference with RR5 zones next to an RA5 zone, and their neighbor right next door has the same amount of property, but they can't use it the same, and it just becomes really problematic. That's why I think this has come up in different conversations. I don't know if the 10%. I mean, I wouldn't mind stepping that up so that we have a higher percentage there that's reasonable. If it's the 15 or 20, I mean, they're recommending possibly a compromise at 15. I'd like to see some sort of movement there.
I'd be happy with the 15. And the nice part's if we get into it and find that that's not sufficient, we can expand that.
Right, and I'd like to see the data too that you have that everyone seems to be building at that. That's what seems to be the driving force for it. And the other, I want to point out, I would assume the reason why they had the 1,000 and the 2,000 on there originally was to eliminate some of these really small properties and all of a sudden having large structures on there. Is that fair? And so they had that separation.
Yeah, I think that was a follow-up text amendment to the original, is to say, okay, we're going to draw a distinction, and they drew it as at 1 acre, less than an acre. We're going to limit it because of the size limitations. In the house siding and the septic tanks and those type of things. And then above the 1 acre, they bumped it up to the 2,000, whether you had 1.01 acre or 10 acres. And so this is much more flexible and gives much more ability there.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the ordinance to amend the following sections as stated in number 6 with the note that the percentage is 15%.
Did we want to remove that 5,000 cap?
Yes, and let's remove that 5,000 cap as well.
Okay, second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt regular agenda item number 6 with the noted changes of 15% and removal of the 5,000 square foot cap. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion will carry 3-0. Next on our agenda is regular agenda item number 7. This is to approve an ordinance amending various sections of various chapters of the Utah County Code relative to misdemeanor violations. My understanding is this is a cleanup of our code in relationship to current state law. Dave?
David Shawcroft, the County Attorney's Office. Yes, Senate Bill 20 was passed this last legislative session, which provided that all county code violation provisions that did not specify the exact class of a misdemeanor violation would become, as of July 1st, infractions unless the county took action. The state did the same thing with the state code, and they reclassified all of those that were not classified specifically as Class B misdemeanors. So this, what this is a review of the county code, and any provisions that simply stated that they were a misdemeanor, which in a different location of the county code said that those would be Class B misdemeanors, are clarified so that they are in fact stated specifically as Class B misdemeanors.
Okay, I have a totally different perspective on this one. The state legislature that did that, I understand that if it's not listed, it automatically, in the past, was classified as a Class B misdemeanor.
Correct.
Class B's misdemeanor are punishable by $1,000 or imprisonment up to 6 months in jail. This is where it bothers me, because as I look down through here, we're talking about zone violations, barking dogs, nuisance stuff, penalties of violations of permits, hindrance of obstruction, and we really want to put this in. I mean, I felt like the state legislature was being wise and leaving them as an infraction. Let's leave it as an infraction instead of possibly saying let's throw them into jail. And I mean, I know that it probably doesn't go that route. They'll probably go with the fine on this thing, but still, it seems like we're criminalizing. And I'm against this. I'm against writing this in. I think if we leave it the way it is, it becomes an infraction, and therefore we can just give them a fine if they violate this.
Well, what I would suggest is that we review it to make a determination as to what classification you would like. If you want it to be an infraction, then that would be fine. Otherwise, there will be inconsistencies, because in our code, we currently have various locations where it says Class B misdemeanor, and some places where it just says misdemeanor. And the type of offense is basically the same. So if we simply let the law take effect to where those automatically become infractions that are not specified, that in my view will create more inconsistency in our code.
Well, I agree we should be consistent in our code, but again, I have a hard time with criminalizing. I think the state legislature, whoever put this forward, was looking in the sense of let's not try to criminalize everything that goes on, from a barking dog to a zoning violation with penalty of jail time in there. And if we need to clean it up in different parts of our county ordinances, I think we should do it. That's just my opinion.
One option there would be to go through the county code and those that are currently classified as misdemeanors or as Class B misdemeanors, to specify which of those you would like to be infractions. That would be there. That way there would be a deliberation and a choice, instead of just an automatic event that would take place.
And that would be my preference, Dave, would be to go through that cleaner like that.
I was just looking at what we had in hand, probably anticipating that there was going to be more on the backside that we're going to have to deal with. But anyway, that's...
And we do have a period of time, so if you'd like to continue this matter and do an analysis there, again, that automatic conversion won't take place until July 1st.
No, and I appreciate you getting on this, because we do have to address it because of what the state did. But I think that rather than a blanket sweep, I'd like to go through it a little more detailed.
And that, yeah, we'll just...
So, Dave, I guess the question is do you want to continue this for a week, continue this without date, or strike it and review that with the commission?
Well, that's your choice. I would not do it a week. I think it will probably take more time than that. But if you want to strike it or continue it a month, or I can put it back in a month or so after you've had a chance to review it, or after your review, obviously you can put it back at your choice.
My question on this would be slightly legal. Is continuance without date just give us a little more cover because we're aware the state's working on it, or does it matter?
No, that would be fine also.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we...
Go ahead, Bill.
I'll make a motion that we continue. I forget the number on it. What number is it?
Number
7. I'll make a motion that we continue without date, number 7 on our regular agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue regular agenda item number 7 without date. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 We'll carry 3-0. All right. Moving onward here, I believe we've come to setting our closed meetings. We do not have a need for 14 or 15. We do for 16 and 17.
I'll make a motion that we strike agenda item number 14 and 15.
Second.
A motion and a second to strike regular agenda items number 14 and 15. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries 3-0.
I'll make a motion that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual or individuals at today's date at this location, following the completion of our regular agenda.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve regular agenda item number 16. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion will carry 3-0.
I'll make a motion that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting for a strategy session to discuss the pending or reasonable imminent litigation at today's date at this location following the completion of our regular agenda.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve regular agenda item number 17. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion will carry 3-0. We had no work session items submitted. Is there any general public comment? Seeing none, we'll thank you for your participation thus far and move to our closed meetings.